Welcome to SEL in EDU.
where we discuss all things social and emotional in education.
I'm Krista.
I'm Craig, and we are your host on this journey.
This podcast is created in partnership with Pennsylvania ASCD.
Greetings and good day, SEL and EDU family. It is another great day. We're so excited. We have another incredible friend to the show. But before we get started, Krista, how is your heart? How are you holding up today?
So here's the funny thing. We just got done one podcast recording, and actually my heart is super full after that recording. And it's even bigger now because I get to see a new friend. This is our second time getting a chance to see each other in video, and we're getting a chance to meet up face to face in a couple weeks. So right now my heart is overflowing. I'm feeling really good. I'm like, bring on the day, bring on the challenges. Let's get this.
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, I feel like, I am more luminous, because I'm just looking at the title by our wonderful guest, Shane Saeed, being the flame. So I'm just excited, like, okay, how are you being a incredible flame for the world? Looking forward to like hearing what are some of the things that happen on the ground. So I'm super excited. And personally, I am just really excited because I have my first godson that's going to be joining us in the world in a couple of months. And I had a chance to spend some time in Cleveland, a place I've never been to. And so it's really awesome to just know that that's happening, but also being able to spend time. An investment of self care for me has been spending time with those I hold dear. And that is a gift that you cannot put a price on. So I'm feeling really whole today. So, yeah.
I'm really excited for this new little one coming in, that they're going to have you as a mentor and a connection. I think they're
Oh,
incredibly blessed to have you in their life, especially from like the very, very start. So congratulations.
oh, thank you. Thank you. You are so kind.
Well, and we'll get to continue learning how to be the flame. So we have a very special guest with us. Her name is Shane Saeed. She is currently a district level instructional coach in St. Vrain Valley Schools. Did I pronounce that correctly?
You did.
Yes. And you have a podcast that is named Brainwaves.
Yes.
So
yes,
now I'm like, oh my gosh, now I'm making the connection here. And she is located in Colorado, coaching and facilitating professional development for educators K-12. She is a lifelong learner, having started by receiving her bachelor's in psychology, I love that, with an elementary education licensure from the University of Colorado at Boulder, where she received the Dorcas Diana Wolf Scholarship. During her student teaching, she joined AmeriCorps and worked in a Title I school in Denver Public Schools. When Shane graduated, she received a teaching position in Erie, Colorado as a fourth grade teacher. She then earned her first master's degree, holy cow, woman, her first master's degree in curriculum and instruction with a focus on literacy from CU Boulder, and her second master's degree in school leadership with a principal licensure from CU Denver. Currently, and this is so exciting, Jane is working on her doctorate in executive leadership with a focus on educational equity and is slated to defend her research and graduate in spring of 2024. In addition, I was able to connect with Shane because she is an ASCD emerging leader, class of 2022, and was chosen as one of 20 in the world. She is a big believer in community and collaboration and shares through social media on Instagram and on Twitter, at Fantastically Fourth on Instagram and at Saeed_Shane on Twitter. Please welcome Shane. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thank you so much. Holy cow. It's once you read it out, I'm like, that's a lot of things.
You're incredible. Like, this is you. I'm like, first and then a second. Holy cow, woman.
I just, lifelong learner, and I can't get enough. And I keep saying to myself, like, after this doctorate degree, you're done. And then I think, will I be done? Or will someone say, hey, this is a really cool degree opportunity. Are you interested? And I might go, Sure, because it's where I learn the most.
I can really relate to that. It took me many, 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 many years to finish my doc program. And I'm like, I never want to learn again, which is so not true because now I'm devouring books like crazy. But I'm thinking about like little ways of, and it's not even the degree or a paper or anything, but it's that process of learning. Like, well, can I learn a different language? And can I learn this? And can I learn how to do that? So I love that. And
Oh,
oh, I'm sorry.
oh no, I was going to say and I've been really fortunate in my last 3 programs. So all 3 of my graduate programs have been cohort style. So I've grown with the same group of educators in each one of those programs. And I would say the camaraderie and the relationship that happens really elevates the learning as well. So I've been very fortunate to have it really fit the needs of my learning style.
I feel that has been, as I'm looking at Craig here in the video, I feel like that, what you've just described is what I found in the ASCD EL program. These are my people. Like I felt like not so alone where I was working, that it's natural to want to keep learning and connecting and elevating each other's work. And so it's thrilling to have you come be a part of that and help us learn and grow. And so we're here today to pick into your brain and to learn more. So I'm sure that Craig has got some questions knowing about your book.
Right.
And so I'm going to kick it over to you, my friend.
Well, I mean, one, I was most intrigued by the word sum matrix. I'm like, why didn't someone not share that with me? So I'm feeling cheated, but I'm so glad that you did it. So now I'm like rethinking my whole word development strategy. So thank you so much for that. So you got to check that out on Instagram. I'm like, oh, this is cute. Like, yes, come through word sum matrix. Why? Can we use that in grad school? I think we can. We will.
Oh, 100%. Anytime you come across those words that you're like, what does that even mean? You break it down by its word parts.
Hey! All right. So before we get into, so many fascinating aspects of who you are in just a small dose of time, I'm curious, but I think we're curious. How are you taking care of yourself? So what are the ways that you are deliciously enjoying self-care?
So I get to the gym about 5 to 6 times a week. It is the place where I feel like I can reflect. I can just kind of let my brain go while also making my body happy. And lifting has been something that I've been doing for the past 10 years for myself consistently. And luckily enough, I have a great partner. We met actually through the gym 9 years ago, and we do it together. So it's one of those things that not only do I get to do it for myself, but it's time that we get to spend together. And that's really the main way. And then of course, on the weekends, I love a good sleep in. I don't sleep enough on the weekdays. And so on the weekends, I do what I call binge sleeping. It can be anywhere from 8 to 13 hours of sleep. And that's one way that I make sure that I'm ready for the next week, is getting myself well rested on the weekends.
Wow. Well, I am also doing some lifting, probably not as often as I should, but I know that when I go to the gym and then I'm able to start my day, because I go first thing in the morning, my day is absolutely different. And I get so much more done.
Yes, you feel so productive.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, what is the origin story of being the flame?
It actually is a saying that my dad used with my siblings and me as we were growing up. And so he immigrated from Iran and during the revolution. And it was really important to him that we were not only striving for greatness in everything that we did, but, being true leaders in everything that we did as well. And so we were always told growing up to be the flame. You're in a group project. Okay. How are you being the flame? How are you leading that group project? And that's, leadership, but also leaving people positive and better off than you found them. And it just happened to be a family saying. So when this book came about, and it was all about relationships and community building and leaving others more positive than you left them, or than you, found them. I called him and I said, can I use Be the Flame as my title? Is that allowed? Can I coin that? He goes, you sure can. So he's very excited that it's out there for everyone to now be the flame.
And so talk me through too. I read this book and it was like didn't want to put it down, looking at all of these ideas and then what you can do in the classroom. And I'm not in the classroom anymore, but I'm also offering professional development. And so there were a few that I'm like, oh, I'm familiar with this. And then there were some new ones for me. And I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And the thing that I liked especially is I know that you're an elementary school teacher. And I want people to know that this doesn't just stay in elementary. Like all of the practices and the activities you have in here, I have done some of them or could do them in my high school classroom. So I don't want anybody to walk away thinking, oh, this is, for elementary school, and we need this as adults. And I love how you named the chapters. So I don't know if you remember all of those pieces. So it started off with the spark and then kindle, ignite, stoke, catch, fuel, spread, and ablaze. And as I'm reading through it, like I felt a sense of momentum. And I'm wondering if you could talk about your experiences and how you organize them based on your experiences in the classroom.
Definitely. I love a good theme. I loved a good theme in the classroom when I was doing a lesson, and I love a good theme when it comes to writing. But it really is about how you start from the beginning, always in relationships. One of my favorite analogies of how we build trust is Brene Brown's marble jar, and how trust isn't built in big moments, it's built in very small moments and small moments over time. And so we can never assume that we have started off with a student or a coworker or families or caregivers that we have a positive rapport right off the bat. That has to be shown and built through action and time. And so the spark is so what is it to you? The reflection on essentially educators that had a really profound effect on you, a positive, profound effect. And then the Kindle is like, once you've sparked an idea of what a really great relationship looks like based on your experience, how are you going to use that to kindle into one-on-one relationships and rapport with students within your room? And then moving from there, right, it's ignite. So once you've kindled, you can then move into igniting a bigger community, making sure that students actually have community among one another, because the learning space, although it is incredibly important for students and teachers to have a one-on-one relationship, in order for students to take risks and feel safe in their learning environment, they have to know they're not being judged by their peers. And so I really tried to, as you said, grow the metaphor or the analogy of a fire that is starting from nothing and growing into something that is even bigger.
And I love the fact that you're focusing on it's student to student as well. And I feel that sometimes that is an afterthought, or like, oh, these kids are just in this group or they prefer to work here. And we know, I call it like creating a connected community of learners. And one of my mentors, Tom Stecker, told me about a researcher at Hofstra University. Her name is Dr. Karen Osterman. And she was studying mean girl behavior in middle schools and then looked at the guys and then looked at adults. And essentially, all of her research boiled down to the more I know about you, the less likely I'm even to think about hurting you. And so the fact that you focused really explicitly on, and the title is Be the Flame, Sparking Positive Classroom Communities, we have to continually get our students talking to each other and connecting to each other to see those strengths, because we want the learning to be accessible and inclusive and not just the teacher and the student.
Yes, exactly.
I'm curious how what are you facing these days with some of the young people that are coming to your classroom, or are some of the young people that you are dealing with? I'm curious what are you hearing in Colorado, because here in Boston, mean, we're still talking about Beyonce and whether or not, she should have had the, like, album of the year. But I know some people love Charlie.
Yeah, I've heard that there is some some hurt feelings over that. She is queen, so I get it.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting, especially coming out of the pandemic, of the students had a real lack of social connection for the last few years. And so getting back into the swing in their classrooms of not only being able to communicate well and appropriately with themselves, others, and their teachers, we're seeing that we're having to actually do more explicit teaching of those learning behaviors and of those collaborative behaviors than maybe in the past. And so a lot of the things that I might say with the teachers that I coach is we assume nothing. We assume that they don't come in with these skills because they're not innate. And we have to make sure that they have them so that we aren't under the assumption that they had them and now they're not using them. And so it's punitive now when they're not able to collaborate, when in fact they never had them. And so therefore we need to teach them.
Yeah, a number of our teachers, like there was just a parent meeting a few moments ago. We have a number of young. So what we're seeing right now is our kindergartners who were in the pandemic, who are now in first or second grade. They're spending a lot more time on, like, the social development, and they find that they're having we're now in February at this point. They're finally starting to see, like, the work that they started back in August and September is finally manifesting. It's taken months for them to see that students know how to tap into the tools of regulation, are not necessarily aggressive in some ways towards one another in their language or how they use their bodies, spaces, that they're finally taking to that. And I'm just curious how you're supporting other educators who are probably at their wits' end because they're like, when is it going to all come together that we're doing all of these things? So I'm just curious from your lens and working with other educators, how that work is coming along.
Yeah, I mean, so last week I was in a third grade classroom where we did an explicit model lesson on what does it look like to collaborate. And we explicitly introduced common language of active listening, active participation, passive listening, passive participation. We modeled it. We then tied it back to experiences that they've had. So there's a lot of soccer players in that room. What does it look like when you're actively participating on the field? What does it look like if you're passively participating on the field? Making sure that when we are explicitly rolling it out, that we're tying it to their funds of knowledge, their background experience, so that they can understand. But it's a lot of explicit work. And there is the new Teacher Center created a graph of essentially teacher attitudes, especially new teacher attitudes, over the course of their first year. And what I found is that especially those in primary, even if they are seasoned teachers, they were still in the disillusionment phase in about December, January, because as you stated, it has been so difficult to get some of those primary students to where they need to be with learning behaviors so that they can actually be teaching content rather than social skills. And we're finally kind of coming up and out of that. It feels like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but especially for the seasoned teachers where they're very used to, by October, these students have their routines and learning behaviors down. And now they're waiting until February. It feels, disheartening, but we keep saying, we're keeping consistency, we're keeping accountability, and we're keeping reteaching happening to ensure that, we're here for student success. And they've bought into that. It's for student success, and they will see it out in dividends later in the year.
And what you've just shared, though, with that dip is consistent with the SEL research from Castle in 2011 and 2017. Their meta-analyses showed that when you explicitly focus on developing these skills, and oh my goodness, thank you so much. I love that you let's break this down and make sure we're all on the same page with what this looks like and sounds like and feels like and what it's not. and linking it back to funds of knowledge. Like, how is this relevant in the students' lives? Like, if people are looking for, how do I become a culturally responsive teacher? Like right here, how are we connecting this to something that's important to the students and their family life and their cultures? And I don't just mean racial and ethnic. I mean, there's a whole lot to unpack there with culture. But we know that when we're focusing on SEL, that the research is showing us it takes us 3 to 6 months to start shifting their attitudes towards things. And then the next phase is that once we shift the mindset and the attitudes, the behaviors start to change. So we're looking at that 6 to 9 month period where we need to be consistent, and we need to, and I like that you said accountability, because it's not just having students take responsibility for their actions, but I think for us as adults as well, to follow through and modeling those skills and giving opportunities to practice, and not being punitive, like you said, because there's assumption that they're being disrespectful and not that they're still learning to build those skills.
Correct. Like, no student, hopefully you would hope, isn't coming in going, how am I going to get under my teacher's skin today?
Right. I agree. And again, I want to really reiterate this to our listeners, that this is at high school level too. Like, even though some of our students look like full-blown adults, their mindsets are not quite there yet. Their cognitive development is not there. And so when you talk about how you're supporting the teachers and being able to connect with the students, I think these are all really actionable pieces that they can draw upon for their own classroom, no matter what age.
Definitely. And it makes me think of when you brought up culturally responsive practices. Essentially, the United States school system has, really worked upon an individualistic mindset versus a collectivist mindset, right? We're all out individually for ourselves to succeed. Whereas teaching collaborative skills helps students understand that collectively we can work together towards the same goals. And again, coming out of the pandemic, they were individually responsible for their own learning for the last few years, or even when they came back to school, we had very specific seating charts. They weren't allowed to work in groups. They had to be by themselves. And so it is really coming back together of, no, we're shifting away from being independent all the time. And how do we work together towards common goals and learning together?
Yeah, one of the things that I have a curiosity to, we talked to one of our dear friends just a few moments ago, who also does some really great work with teachers. And I am curious, about the state of teaching. It just, you brought up Brene Brown, and I'm gonna have a vulnerability moment. I know I'm in a position of being a school leader, but I don't always realize if I am as tapped in, at this time to my educators or not, because I'm the boss in my institution. And I'm not saying that to be braggadocious, but I do realize that I may have some blind spots to what is really the undercurrent of the state of teaching. And so I'm curious, what are some of the nuggets you are trying to infuse into some of the educators you are working with or talking to or engage with, who really may be on the fence about returning back, next year to keep teaching?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of it is cycling back to every year is different, first and foremost. And so when one year is really hard, we always almost get a reset, which is very cool. And then also when you have a great year is really hard, because then you have to start all over again from the very beginning, it feels like. But it's also wondering what the root causes are for their unhappiness. So is it that, you have this one family that's really difficult, and next year you won't have that one family that's really difficult? Or is it that you aren't feeling supported in your building? Does that mean that you need to leave the entire profession? Or does that mean you might want to seek out employment at a different school? Is it that you are having trouble keeping up with the workload? And so then it's, okay, how do you prioritize what you're focusing on versus where you're spending most of your time. And so to me, it's really digging into, so what are the root causes? How are we spending our time? What is giving us the greatest discomfort? And can we essentially backward plan based on that root cause to support? Or is it, I just had a teacher that I love dearly. I think they are phenomenal. And I coached them last year, and this year they resigned, and it had to do to mental health. And when it's taking care of yourself, you have to put yourself first. And I completely understand that. So again, it comes down to root causes. Is it something within our control that we can change? Or is it something outside of our control that we need to, make a change for ourselves?
I'd like to jump back a little bit, because one of the things you had me thinking about when you said that focus on helping students develop these skills, and that we know that that's necessary and important. And at the same time, educators are being pressured for content and for test scores. And I think that seems to be in opposition to one another, and can also be contributing to a lot of the stress that teachers are feeling with, how do I navigate this and manage this? And so I'm wondering, as an instructional coach, what have you found to be effective conversations or strategies or ways of supporting educators so that they see it's not necessarily one or the other, but that perhaps there are ways to infuse some, or that maybe some days are more care than challenge, and some days are more academic press and challenge than they are care?
So what I think about is teachers that halfway through the year, they're saying, my students don't know how to collaborate and we can't do group work. And so therefore, I can't go back and teach that skill. We just have to keep rolling with the academic content to make sure that they're ready for standardized testing here in 2 months. And what I say to that is it's a layer. So how can we teach like mini lessons on top of the content? For example, last week with my 3rd grade teacher that I'm working with, we layered in the collaborative lesson with her math lesson. So it was like, hey, here's how you collaborate. And now we're going to practice with the math lesson you just did. And they go together. And a lot of times it feels really big. And so I would say my second piece of advice would be, how do we chunk it down to focus on one tiny skill? So we're not trying to teach everything under the sun, social skills wise, as well as trying to get the content in. So what is one tiny nugget? And last week's tiny nugget was, how do we get them actively listening to one another using sentence stems? And that was all we were trying to do. And today I'm excited. I actually get to go back to that classroom today to see how they're doing with the collaboration during math time. So it's twofold, right? How do we layer it in with the content? And how do we then chunk it down to make sure that those mini lessons really are chunks?
I think it's really important that you mentioned too the sentence stems, because that's a scaffold for the kids. Not every student would need that, perhaps, but for those who are still practicing that skill, they know what this can look like and have that little kind of quote cheat sheet. Although I wouldn't say that's cheating, because that's going back to the individualistic mindset that you had versus collective, like we're working together to help each other. Thank you for that. I think that those examples are very tangible ideas that teachers can take away when they're feeling that pressure to be pulled in one direction or the other.
Yes, we don't have to do it all at one time.
I am curious, what would you consider to be your superpower?
Oh, that is a very great question.
Mm-hmm.
He just comes out and hits people with it, and I love it.
Can I focus it like within the education realm?
It's a very open-ended question.
That is a very open-ended question. I would say it would be probably a little bit of the charisma and making even the mundane fun. And a lot of that comes back down to cognitive psychology. If I'm excited about it, all of a sudden you're excited about it. And so if I can bring up the energy level in a classroom or in a PD, that is almost my superpower of buy-in and engagement. Whereas, if you're not excited about the content, it comes off, and then people are also, disengaged. So I would say maybe my ability to hopefully engage people with some of the excitement I bring.
Well, I mean, you do have over 100,000 at least people on like Instagram alone who are loving and adoring what you're doing. I think you might have, a little bit of a flame, a little bit.
That's funny. Yeah, you have a little flame there. Because you are energetic and you're sharing valuable, relevant, practical pieces. We sometimes, like the last person, our friend Jessica, who we had talked to, was also an instructional coach. When you think about moving from your own classroom, and I miss that. I miss that rapport that I had with each of my classes, but then thinking that you get to have that with other teachers' classes and through them. I think, what would you say, what would be some advice that you would give newer instructional coaches coming into a position, especially during a time where people are very stressed? And so what has worked for you that you would offer to other coaches who are in your position?
Active listening and paraphrasing is huge for being able to identify clarity as well as empathize. And so I think when we actively listen and we paraphrase, we can get down to what someone is really trying to tell us, and being able to empathize with them of, yeah, you're right. This is hard. I did a model lesson in a first grade classroom yesterday. And this is a teacher it's our beginning of our cycle together. And she goes, they're a little wild in the afternoon. And I was like, oh, we'll see how it goes. I'm very excited. And granted, it was a great lesson, but she was not kidding. And it was really good for me to also be able to further empathize with her of, I experienced this too. And yes, what can we do to support not only you, but them in the afternoons to make sure that we can keep them engaged, we can keep the pace high, we can keep the engagement high, but you're not going home completely exhausted from consistently redirecting. And so really stepping in to see where they're coming from, what they're experiencing, being in the classroom with the students so that you understand. It's just like when you were a teacher in your classroom and you would have someone come in and be like, oh, they're not your students. They are not as, talkative as you say. And you're like, you weren't here all day.
Yeah, you got that one little snapshot.
Yeah.
That reminds me, a couple weeks ago, I still do classroom coaching as well. And so I was supporting a teacher, and she wanted to do a restorative circle. She wanted to do a circle, not a restorative. So just getting them up. And I had heard of the secondary teacher saying well, the kids don't want to talk. They just don't want to share. And I'm like, okay, I can understand. But in that classroom where the students did comply, they got up and they moved into a circle. But I would say 3/4 of them passed, even on questions like, what's your favorite candy? Something to learn, and I thought, wow. And I was curious as to why they were quiet, not judgmental like we've talked about, but it really just struck me, as an educator too, you have students who are so excitable and energetic and want to share everything and talk about everything. And then the ones who are just, because of what's been happening in society, have just kind of withdrawn and disengaged. And so looking at those different ends of the spectrum.
Definitely. And it makes me think about, again, coming back down to root causes, right? Behavior is a form of communication. And so when we have students that are disengaged and not wanting to collaborate or discuss with their peers or in front of their peers, there's a bigger question of not, they aren't doing it and that's disrespectful, because that's definitely not it. There's a reason. And what is the reason? And how can we then start to work on that?
And I think of them as low risk, low courage questions, where you're not asking them to share something really significant, but we did get into some questions that were like TV shows and music that you listen to, and where people just kind of went around and shared. But it's interesting, that dynamic from one end to the other.
As we, I think, as we come to a close, I'm just curious, how can folks get in touch with you? What are the ways that people stay connected?
Well, I am all over the socials. It's where I love to connect with people most. So if you are on Instagram, I am on Instagram at fantastically fourth, rooting from my fourth grade classroom. I haven't changed that yet. I'm kind of in love with it. I'm also on Twitter at Saeed_Shane. And then if you are on TikTok, I do TikTok every now and then, and that is at the fantastically fourth. And I think that's because someone took fantastically fourth, which couldn't believe it. So I'm the fantastically fourth.
And that makes a difference.
It does.
Yeah. Thank you, Shane. It's been such a pleasure to learn from you and get a chance to talk and kind of pick your brain a little bit about what you're experiencing, how you're taking care of yourself. And so I appreciate your time. Thank you. And I look forward to connecting with you in Colorado.
Yes, I cannot wait. Thank you both so much for having me on the podcast. I cannot wait to go back and listen.
All right. Well, SEL and EDU family, it has been our pleasure to actually spend time with Shane Saeed. And so Shane has already shared, these are the different ways you can stay connected on IG, Twitter, and TikTok as well. And so if you happen to be in Colorado, hey, you never know. Might actually see Shane out in the wonderful universe, continuing to do magical things on behalf of so many young people that we serve. You gotta get a copy of Be the Flame, Sparking Positive Classroom Communities. It is sold in all the places that you love to read and hold. While we are away, SEL and EDU family, we are hoping that you hold yourself and someone dear real tight as you continue to live and lead in the light. We love you. We'll see you soon.